we'd like to welcome everybody to the first episode of Hip Hop Reminiscence. My name is Joe Rosen, my co-host here, Fuzz Jackson. We're going to be talking all things old school hip hop. And, I don't know everything about it. Fuzz knows a lot more than me, but this is supposed to be fun and really talk about old school hip hop and get a discourse going about it because, Fuzz and I have been talking and we believe that folks don't talk about the golden age of hip hop as much as they should have, or they should be, excuse me. So, again, my name is Joe Rosen. I'm an attorney, corporate sports and entertainment law attorney. I've been an attorney for 25 years. I also am a baseball agent, and I've been doing that for about 18 years. And I teach entertainment law at Boston College Law School. I work in the old school hip hop area a little bit, doing some licensing, branding deals, things like that. But this isn't really about that. This is really about my love for old school hip hop. So with that, I'll kick it over to Fuzz, and then we'll get into the topic of the day.
All right. Greetings and salutations, good people. I am Fuzz Jackson. I am a rapper. I am all things hip hop. I have been involved in hip hop for about 30 years now. So I am really glad to do this with Joe and throw a little bit of my expertise in there. That's about it.
So what we're going to try to do in this podcast is talk about a different issue every week. And sometimes it might be a different group or artist. Sometimes it might be a different issue in hip hop. Our focus is generally going to be on the 80s and 90s. Although in some episodes, including today, we're going to probably get into the 2000s a little bit. Today, our episode is about conscious rap over the years. And the way we're going to work this out is I'm going to bring up some questions, kind of kick it over to Fuzz for a little bit for his input, maybe add a couple things on my end. And we hope you enjoy this. So let's talk about conscious rap because it's really a different conversation that it seems like no one really agrees on. And if you look back over the years, in my mind, the first conscious rap song is probably The Message by Grandmaster Flash. That's the first song I can remember. Came out in 1982. I was 9 years old. And it was about saying, all right, here's our message to you. We're going to talk about the way we live, what we're seeing growing up, which is very different than what you guys are seeing growing up. And that was sort of my introduction to, okay, there's a different world out there and rap can deliver a real message. When you see the term social rap out there, conscious rap out there, there's a lot of different definitions that go around, but I think the main definition that goes around is bringing a message to make folks aware of specific issues. It can be, economic issues, social issues, racial issues. I'm going to talk about a song later that I think is one of my favorite conscious rap songs of all time, which is really mental health issues. But I think that's really, what we talk about conscious rap. So the first thing I want to throw out to you, Fuzz, is, we talked about it a little bit before we got on here. Sometimes when you talk about conscious rap in the 80s and 90s, folks talk about Public Enemy and, X-Clan and groups like that. To me, I don't really see those artists as conscious rappers. I see them as political rappers. And the difference I see is that conscious rap is there to make folks aware of a message, and political rap is there to incite people to do something about an issue. What do you think on that?
I would definitely agree with that. With the political side of things, like you said, you got your Public Enemies, your X-Clan. You also got Paris. A lot of people forget about Paris too.
Absolutely.
Those guys were executioners of getting points across. Like those guys knew how to get their points across with their music and with their message. And I think the difference between that and the conscious rap, it goes back to what you said earlier, Joe, about just being aware and being mindful of what's around you and pay attention what's going to happen towards your future. A lot of the conscious rap I think that I heard growing up back then, a lot of them were rapping about, things that were going to be not just going on present day with the conscious thought, but things that are coming towards us in the future. So it's a big difference. I think like when you talk about conscious rap, you can also throw the native tongue tribe in there.
Hmm.
That was a different type of vibe for that era. I mean, it was the late 80s, but it was still a different type of vibe for that era. So I think conscious is, like you said, it's more of being self-aware and manifesting everything, present and future. And conscious and political rap is, what's going on now, let's take action. How are we going to get, this message out, and how are we going to do it ASAP? So yeah, that's pretty much the difference in my eye.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, if you Google conscious rap, a lot of political rappers, in my mind and in your mind, come up. And I think that's just, that's the internet, right? There's not a lot you can do about
Right.
that. But I think there's a difference. And I don't think people talk about that difference a lot. And, this is an interesting conversation because, we talked about last week a little bit. Hip hop is really the only genre of music, and I'm curious your thoughts why, that rap has to be, it's like there's sub-genres of hip hop, right? I mean, if you think about country music or rock music or pop music, you know, for example, there's a big country artist now named Hardy who has a song called Wait in the Truck. And it's about a guy who sees a girl on the side, sees a woman on the side of the road who's been beaten by her husband, and he goes in and like takes action on the husband, right? Like that would be considered conscious country, right? I
Yeah,
get,
yeah, yeah.
right? But no one calls it conscious country. They just call it country music, right? Like they do that. So hip hop is really, to me, the only genre of music where everything has to be divided and put in its like specific category. And I think that's kind of unfair. And that brings me, I guess, to the next point, and something we've talked about a lot is, are there conscious rappers or are there conscious rap songs? When folks think of conscious rappers, I think they think of guys like Talib Kweli, Lupe Fiasco, rappers like that. And some of those, Lupe Fiasco has a lot of conscious rap songs, right? Like a lot of
Right.
does conscious rap songs about conscious rap music. So I think that, guys like that, I think that's fine. But I mean, Fuzz, what do you think? Are there conscious rappers? Like, can you categorize someone as a conscious rapper and just leave them there? Because Kweli hated that.
Right. Which I never understood that, because even with the Reflection Eternal stuff he did with High Tech, that's pretty much conscious. And even if you go further back to some of the sound bombing mixtapes when he kind of made his introduction, the first big songs he did were conscious songs. So I mean, I don't know, that's kind of weird. I feel like if you were to say like today's conscious rapper, even though he's older, I would say Common, because
Yeah.
Common never really minded being put in that category. And his biggest records are conscious songs, you know? So and those are records that are actually not just big in the underground rap conscious community, right? They're big all over the world. You know what I mean? So I mean, he doesn't mind being a conscious rapper. I feel like early Kanye was conscious. I mean, I know we're not talking about him now, but like the
You're right.
first,
Yeah.
but like that first album, and he also had conscious rappers on that album. So if you want to go back and say like in the early 2000s, was there conscious rap? Yeah, it was. Whether they wanted to be in that category or not, it was still conscious music, you know?
Yeah. And I hear you on that too. I always think like, because I used to listen to I mean, there was that group, right? And this is kind of after what we probably think of as old school rap, although it's 20 years old at this point, right? But
Mhm.
you had what people often refer to as the golden age of hip hop, which is like, 1985 to 1997, somewhere in there, right? I mean, I'm probably making too long of a time period, but Then there was that period in the late 90s where, you kind of got out of it a little bit. And then there was that early 2000 period where you had Black Star with Mos Def and Talib Kweli. You had Mos Def, you had Talib Kweli, you had Lupe Fiasco. You had all those rappers who are considered conscious rappers. But if you listen to their albums, Get by Talib Kweli is maybe one of the most famous conscious rap songs of all time, right? I mean, it's a that's specifically about going out there and like, this is what we have to do to get by. Like, people need to be aware of this and not punish us for that. Like, that's what it's got to be about. But then if you look at that same album, you have Gorilla Monsoon rap and things like that, which probably wouldn't be, characterized by conscious rap. I was trying to think of this, Fuzz, like, if the two rappers, and I don't think folks would consider them conscious rappers, but if you look at the full body of work, you know who the two rappers I would think are the most conscious rappers are Nas and Tupac.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I would, yeah, because every Nas record, well, we all know that like Pac was always like, because Pac, even though Pac claimed thug life, Pac was more of a poet. He was more of a conscious brother, you know what I mean? And the same with Nas, but Nas was a street dude that was super conscious. And I think every record, every album he put out, he brought some type of consciousness, even with the new stuff that he's done with Hit Boy. Those songs on those albums, man, are amazing. And I think now with him being like 50 now, right? Like, he is showing a lot more consciousness now in the music. So I feel like I would agree with that. Like, Nas is even when he beefed with Jay-Z,
right?
This shit still sounded conscious. You know what I mean? It was yeah, that's a pretty good comparison, man. I can't argue with that if I wanted to.
I mean, when we talk about, when we get into a later podcast and we talk about, the best albums of all time, and, I'm sure we'll talk about Illmatic there because Illmatic is just so unique. And every song on that is unbelievable. Most songs on that are conscious. Like, I listened to it yesterday and I didn't really think of it going in. I'm like, are all his songs? I mean, you have New York State of Mind. You have, there's so many different songs on there that I would view as conscious rap. And the same thing with Tupac, like Tupac's considered probably a gangster rapper, right? I mean, that's, I don't know. It's hard to tell because he kind of like, he had songs on the radio. He did gangster rap. He came from Digital Underground. He had conscious stuff. He's doing Dear Mama,
Right.
I mean, there's so many different things there, but there's so many different Tupac songs and Nas songs that I think, like, if you're going to say someone is a conscious rapper, to me, that means more of their stuff was conscious than not. And Nas and Tupac, to me, I think have the most. You know what I mean?
What's your favorite Pac song?
Oh,
if you could pick like two or three.
I mean, the thing is, I think "Holler If You Hear Me" was my favorite song. Like, but that's not a conscious song, right? I mean, that was it. I like the old Digital Underground stuff because that was like, I Get Around, and like when he came out, of Digital Underground. But Dear Mama was so different to me. Like, I think that's my favorite song by him because it was so different. It wasn't kind of what we were used to from anybody. I mean, the whole, like, we could do a whole podcast on the rap ballad, right? Because there's only a few good ones, and the good ones are fantastic, right? And I mean, and Dear Mom is one of those, right? I mean, Dear Mom is definitely one of those. So I mean, I would say that one is, and I mean, if we're talking about conscious rap, Dear Mama's got to be near the top of the list because, like, who's thinking about, what gangster rapper or hard rapper, if we don't want to call him a gangster rapper, is singing about his mother?
Right. Let's not forget about Brenda's Got a Baby.
Absolutely. There you go. Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, but I think my favorite Pac song would have to be If My Homies Call.
Okay.
Yeah, that because I think that was his first single when he went solo. I think like off the Two Apocalypse Now album. Maybe I could be wrong because I don't know a whole lot of like Pac songs, but he's called definitely be one of them. And I think my favorite Nas song would have to be with AZ, Life's a Bitch.
Okay.
That would definitely, yeah, that would definitely have to be. But yeah. Just imagine if they could have done a song together, bro.
I know. It would have been perfect. And for me, for Nas, I mean, the whole Illmatic album was spectacular. But I think, like
Hmm.
you're saying, pure song, just one song from him, I think Hero is my favorite song. And that wasn't old
Ooh,
15 years ago. But like that song with Carrie, remember how big Carrie Hilson was? Like Carrie Hilson
yes.
was like enormous for like 3 years. She was in every song in the world, and then she like disappeared. And I don't even know what she did after that. But she was spectacular. And that song Hero, I mean, that's a conscious rap song too. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like that song was amazing.
Yeah.
To me, everything Nas has ever done has been great. I mean, my I was a big when I was in high school, I used to love Third Base. I just thought they were like just different than everybody, right? Like it was so unique.
Yeah, they were dope.
And when they broke up and MC Search went solo, and on his solo album, which I thought was really good, he had that song Back to the Grill, which had that, I think that might have been the first song on the radio that Nas was on,
Right,
you know.
right.
So
Yeah.
let's go back a little bit and then we'll bring it, to today. Cause I definitely, as a rapper now, I want to ask you your thoughts on like conscious rap in 2023 and kind of where it is. But like, let's go back to the 80s and 90s, right? We're the same age. We're both 49 years old.
Right.
And, conscious rap, I think kind of came, it was there in the 80s. It definitely was there in the 90s. I think, like you said, with the native tongues, that's kind of where it gained popularity with Tribe and De La and the Jungle Brothers too. Like they had a lot of conscious songs. But
Right.
going back to the 80s and 90s, I think my favorite conscious rap songs were by artists that you probably wouldn't consider conscious rappers. Now I'll throw a couple out
Mm,
to well, one's definitely a conscious rapper. So I think like Show Business by Tribe was so different because they were talking about the industry, and that's a conscious rap song. It's not about you know it's not about race, ethnicity, so any of that. But I mean, that's about like, look, this business is terrible, but
right.
what's happening in it. But I'll say I think my two favorite are by rappers who there's no way in the world you would consider conscious rappers, but these are conscious rap songs in my opinion. It was A Good Day by Ice Cube,
Mm,
Playing Tricks on Me by Ghetto Boys.
mm,
It was a good
yeah.
day. It was a good day was again a ballad, effectively, right? It was a good day came out, and I'm like, this is about what constitutes a good day where he lives, right? And that was different. And then My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me. I haven't done a lot of research on the specific song. I'm not even sure it's out there, Fuzz, but like that's about mental health issues, right? Like that's about paranoia. That's
Yeah.
about them seeing things and having mental issues and things like that. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's I listened to that when I was walking my dog today, and I'm like, man, like this is intense.
Yeah, yeah. And for the time that it came out too, like that was that was a huge, huge song because nobody had looked at first of all, nobody had looked at rap in that way. And
Right.
then no, the subject matter was just crazy. And it was just three different stories, but it was so on target. I I'd have to say like one of my favorite conscious records, like you said, isn't by a conscious rapper. And it's Sally Got a One Track Mind by Diamond D.
Okay.
Yo, like he by far is not really a conscious rapper, but it's just something about that subject matter over that bass line that just like, yo, do. Yo, like the first time I heard that I was sold. And I didn't even know it was a conscious record till like the third or fourth time I heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like wrapped up into the track, but that's like one of my all-time favorites. That one, most that one and "Slow Down" by Brand Nubian.
Slow Down by Brand Nubian's a great one. I mean, we got to talk about BDP, right? Because I mean, they were kind of like, I mean, we'll talk about KRS probably at length when we talk about
yeah.
all time. But I mean, my philosophy, I mean, he kind of invented it almost, it as a
Yeah.
format, right? And I mean, he just did so much of it. I'm going to throw one out there because I was thinking about it today. Probably my favorite hip hop song of all time, and you'll probably laugh at this. I might not get much credibility on this one. People might think do the podcast because of the next statement out of my mouth. But my favorite hip hop song of all time is "Rock This Funky Joint" by Poor Righteous Teacher. It is, I think it is the perfect rap song. The flow, the samples, the scratching, like everything about it, I think is perfect. So where do Poor Righteous, because I was thinking about this, like, are the Poor Righteous Teachers conscious rappers? Are they political rappers? Are they both? Are they religious rappers? Like,
right. Yeah. I would put them more into the conscious category.
right.
Because they were pretty consistent with the conscious vibe, I think.
Yeah.
I would, yeah, I think I would put them more conscious than anything. Because when they came out, man, it was so different too, because they were on the like the reggae vibe kind of, and it was still hip hop, but it was still like kind of like dance hallish, like, and the way they was rapping was kind of like chanty kind of. It was different, but it was intelligent lyrics. It was smart lyrics. It was well written material. The beats were crazy. It just sounded so different from what was out, and people loved it. And I get it. You know what I mean? Like that was just, and at the time that when that came out too, it was nothing but gangster rap out. When
You're right.
that record dropped, it was just a lot of gangster rap. So it really shook things up, man, when that record dropped.
I think you're right too, because the name of the album, I mean, they had a number of albums, but the name of the first album, or with Rock This Funky Joint, was Holy Intellect, right? So like
Mhm.
almost preaching that, and the rapper's name was Wise Intelligence. So like he's preaching intelligence, he's preaching teaching, he's preaching. There was definitely a lot of religious aspects in there, right?
Right.
But like he was preaching, like, I don't know, like becoming, just really getting educated and really learning,
Mhm.
that those types of things. And you're right, that wasn't a focus of a lot of that wasn't a focus of a lot of hip hop back then.
Yeah, it was totally off the spectrum, man. And I think that's why people really dug it, because it came out at a time, I think, that we needed something different. We needed something positive. Because for a while it was so much gangster rap, it was getting depressing. You know what I mean? It was getting
Yeah,
sad. Like, damn,
yeah,
everybody's gangster. So yeah.
yeah. And then the one I wanted to classify, because the one I wanted to ask you about, because these guys have been around forever, right? And when you talk about the roots, and they go back, I mean, they had plenty of songs in old school. I mean, they date back to the early 90s, right? I mean, they weren't in,
Yeah.
I recall, at least the stuff, their album, I think their first album was released in 1991, maybe 1990. I don't have that right in front of me, but it was early 90s. And obviously they're putting out stuff now, right? I mean, Black Thought's all over the place. I mean, they're the house band on Jimmy Fallon. I mean, best live show I've
Right.
ever seen, right? I mean, they're just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Do you classify them as a conscious rapper? Because they definitely have conscious rap songs, right? I mean, The Seed,
Right.
so many songs that you would consider conscious rap songs. But I almost feel like, because they've been rapping for 25 years or 20 years, longer than that, 30 years. I'm not sure you can I don't know. So I'm not sure you can put somebody in a subgenre when they've been rapping that long. There's just no way. It's like trying to classify LL Cool J.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's fact. Yeah, you could definitely. I mean, I would personally put the Roots into just that hardcore hip hop,
Yeah.
category, because you know they they cover every level of every type of music from hip hop. It's deep rooted, no pun intended, but like, it's like, you've been to their live shows. They do rock, they do rap, they do jazz, they do whatever. They do covers, they do all, so it's pretty amazing. But yeah, I would just put them in the hardcore hip hop category, and like a hardcore hip hop group that has several conscious records.
Yeah.
And their biggest records are conscious records, So it's kind of crazy. It's crazy how most of the artists that aren't conscious have records that were their biggest records that are conscious records. It's weird, but you know what I
It
mean?
is. Yeah, it definitely is. And I was trying to say, yeah, our producer JR is coming in saying Black Thought is the most underrated rapper.
Facts. Yeah.
I think Black Thought's the best MC of all time. I do. And we'll have that, we'll have that episode later. I just think he does things that no one else can do. Like he's unbelievable. But on the side, I think I agree with you. I think that, even though like Talib Kweli and Mos Def didn't really like to be classified as conscious rappers necessarily, if I was to say, all right, who are conscious rappers, period, which I think means, more conscious songs than not, I agree with you that Common would probably be number one. I think Kweli and Mos Def, because so much of the Black Star, like even, so much of the Black Star album, which is a phenomenal album, and that was 98, I think. Like that whole album, not all of it, but most of it is conscious. And there's, those guys, I think, and that brings us, and I really want to get into where it is now, right? Because most of the conversations, we're going to have on this podcast are about the 80s and 90s, maybe a little bit into the 2000s. I don't even know what old school rap is now, Fuzz, because it's 2023, right? So I always think of it in the 80s and 90s, but like, is old Eminem, old school? I mean, I guess. But now, right? Because hip hop is just so different today than it was in the age we're talking about, right? And conscious rap is still a thing, but I always come back. One of my favorite albums of all time is Lupe Fiasco's The Cool. And that is certainly a conscious album. And there are two songs on that album, which are going to get into this next question for you. Is, one is Hip Hop Saved My Life, and two is Dumb It Down. And Hip Hop Saved My Life is about a rapper who's down on his luck, who gets a hit song called Stack That Cheese and makes a lot of money, right? And it's about how hip hop saved his life. I don't think Stack That Cheese would be a conscious rap song, probably not, right? So, but then you get into Dumb It Down, where Dumb It Down, Lupe is incredibly talented lyrically, and Dumb It Down is about folks telling him he's just going over people's head and they're not going to listen to him. So if you're a rapper now, and again, this gets back to the subgenres too, right? I mean, if you're a rapper now, can you be a conscious rapper and be successful? Now, probably the two most famous rappers now, and probably the two rappers who make the most money, are Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. And you could classify them in the conscious side. But other than that, maybe Logic a little bit. Other than that, are there any conscious rappers out there? And I mean, you're in the business right now. Can you be a conscious rapper and make a living?
I think you can, but, and this is a big but, you're gonna have to work 4 times, 5 times as harder. You're gonna have to engage with your fans more. You're gonna have to have better merch. You're gonna have to have a team behind you, because you don't get the same luxuries as a commercial artist would. You know what I mean? But I think with you being a conscious rapper in 2023, I think it's all about your fan base. And I think the fans are better, because now you can be active, interact with the fans. The fans are a lot more active. there's meet and greets, there's all kinds of things you can do in that type of situation. I think this is where you learn how to be business savvy more so than the artist sometimes. Um, it's definitely tough. And like you look at J. Cole and Kendrick, I mean, it was tough for them starting out, you know what I mean? But if you look at their fan base and their core fans and you see how they buy merch and you see how they buy other people's merches on their label just because they're down with those guys. So I think definitely you can do that, but you have to be business savvy. You got to have a team behind you. It's a lot harder, and you have to have a lot more ammunition going into the war. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
definitely different.
I try, I have a 19-year-old son who likes hip hop. He likes today's hip hop, obviously, more than what I force him to listen to, right? But every once in a while, I'll send him a song, and an older song sometimes, and then sometimes a newer song, like when Kendrick came out with Mr. Morale, like I'll send him a song on that. I'm like, listen to it. And I really, we've talked about Kendrick a lot. Kendrick is one of my favorite MCs, and certainly of the last 20 years. Sometimes, I need to go look online to understand his songs, which I think is kind of cool sometimes, because it's,
Mhm.
I want to understand it, and I need to go online to understand it. But I'll send it to my son, and then he'll pop back to me with like a song by, Lil someone or Young someone. And I'm like, all right, man, like, that's what his generation wants to listen to, or maybe not his generation, but that's what he wants to listen to. So
Mhm.
I always see the conflict, right? If you're a rapper nowadays and you want to be a conscious rapper, because I think the rappers who are conscious now or do conscious songs are rappers who have either had a lot of success or have been around for a long time, right? Common's still
Mhm.
around, and quite, like some of these guys are still around and they're still doing these songs. But
Right.
if you're a rapper coming in and you want to do conscious rap, like if you want to do conscious rap songs, can you sell those songs at the beginning when you don't have the things you just talked about? You don't have a marketing team, you don't have merchandising. Like, do you have to start with Stack That Cheese before you can get to Brenda? You know what I mean?
Yo, you might have to, man. And see, that's the fine line, right? Because you come into it, you saying, I'm not going to change my music for anybody. I'm not going to dumb it down. I'm not going to do this to do that. I'm going to, go from A to Z, strictly being who I am. No one's going to change me. And that's what happens. You get changed. Like you have to do something to make people gravitate towards you. And I think that's why, excuse me, I think that's why now a lot of the new music does sound the same, right? Because everybody's doing the same formula. And it has dumbed people down. No one wants to hear punchlines anymore. No one
Yeah.
wants to hear metaphors anymore. If I've been in that category where, oh man, your music makes me think too much, dude. Like I don't really want to think, which is sad because that's what music is supposed to make us do, right? It's supposed to make us think and take heed of what's going on. But yo, man, it's crazy. You a lot of guys have done it. I mean, I think maybe J. Cole's done it a couple times. Like he's had a couple, and I'm not saying he's done it in a bad way, right? But he's had to do a couple of the love songs, a couple of the, a couple of the club, semi club joints to slide in to get that single, and then everything else took off from there. But it does happen. I guess it's a sense of how whack how whack it comes out, or if you can do that without being whack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those guys have made those type of records where it's like, okay, it's not conscious based lyrically, but I get it and I still rock with it because it's on a different level. But yeah, I think you definitely now have to do something. Like with me, like I don't feel like people like my solo stuff a lot, right? Because it's punchline heavy. It makes you think. You might have to Google to find out what player I'm talking about. You might have to, you know what I
Right.
mean? But that's where the Fuzz and Mac stuff comes in. Where McClain sings and I rap, and people, gravitate to that quicker because, yeah, it's still music that's kind of conscious, but they don't have to think, about, what I said about this player or what I said about this punchline or what movie line did I throw in, you know. So yeah, I think sometimes you have to find other lanes to get people to fall in love with what you do.
Yeah. And I mean, that's it, right? Rap used to be about wordplay, and I'm not sure it's there. What I mean? It's not. I mean, that's a totally different topic, right? That really doesn't
Right.
with conscious, but like you're right. I mean, wordplay, it's still around, but it's not as prevalent as it used to be. It definitely is not. Let me
Hmm.
do this as a rapper out there now, and you know, listening to what's out there right now, and back in the 80s and 90s, right? Because is conscious rap the best kind of rap? And we can even let's
Ooh.
for purposes of this question, let's talk about political rap and religious rap. Like we can PRT, Public Enemy, and then all the conscious, rap songs we talked about. Is that the best kind of rap? And I think there's probably an argument for that, right? Because it educates people on issues that they probably weren't aware of or
Yeah.
didn't know the full scope of. But I guess it depends on what your purpose on music is. Like, do you use music to relax?
Yeah.
Do you use music to educate yourself? Do you use music to entertain? Right? What do you think?
I mean, I would definitely. You know what? I'm gonna give that a strong yes, Joe. I think that conscious rap is the best kind of rap because at some point, all your rappers, whether you like them, whether it's your favorite, least favorite, whatever, they've all made a conscious record,
Yeah,
whether they wanted to or not. It has come out. You know what I mean? So even NWA, Express Yourself is a conscious record.
absolutely.
Meanwhile, the rest of the record, somebody's dying, but but that song is a conscious song. I mean, so I would say conscious rap is definitely the best kind of rap because some of those records probably weren't even made to be famous, right? I bet some of those hits were accidental hits. I bet these were songs where somebody was like, I don't want to do it, it's gonna make me look soft, but it's probably been their biggest record. I know Express Yourself by NWA, other than F the Police, is probably the second biggest record.
And F the Police is probably a conscious rap song too. I mean, more political, but like because
Yeah.
that's certainly inciting. But
You know what I mean?
yeah, but I mean, you could argue that song is conscious as well, right? So I mean,
Hmm.
it is a really interesting point, right? Is that we kind of have this conflict here because a lot of rappers, it seems like they don't want to do conscious rap because it's not going to pay the bills. However, the most successful rappers now, Kendrick and J. Cole, do a lot of conscious rap. And as you said, the artists over the years, some of their most successful songs have been conscious rap songs, right? I mean, certainly Nas, certainly Tupac. Um, you know, they're just, I mean, in my mind, like I said, I think My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me if I asked Willie D and Scarface, is this a conscious rap song? They'd probably tell me hell no. But I think it is. I mean, I'm like listening to this, I'm like, this is about paranoia. This is about mental health issues. They talk about
Right.
suicide, right? Having fatal thoughts of suicide. Like they're talking about these issues in the song. And conscious rap doesn't have to be about a specific issue. It just has to make people aware of an issue,
There
right?
you go.
So,
That's it.
but look, I love the discourse here. I think like, I wish people talked about this more about old school rap. I think there's so many issues here to have conversations about. And, over the weeks, I think we'll plan to do episodes on we'll tackle some of the issues that, people talk about, the best MCs of all time, the best albums of all time, the best groups of all time. I feel like there's not a lot of rap groups anymore. There used
No,
to be
you're right.
rap groups, right? I mean, there's not as many of them anymore. It's just artists now. Just, different times. But, we'll tackle issues on this podcast as well about, the influence of Southern rap, the rise of the female MC. There's so many different things to talk about. And I think eventually we'll get into albums and specific artists and things like that and have guests, as we continue to do this podcast. But I'm just happy to be here with you, Fuzz, and
yeah, no doubt.
Talk about old school rap,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm glad to be a part of it, man. I can't wait to bring on some more episodes. I can't wait to educate and stimulate on these people that don't know the importance and the value of old school hip hop. And I'm sure we're gonna be enlightening some people, man. So y'all get focused and get ready, man. It's going down.
Absolutely. And if people don't agree with us, that's okay. Like I'm used to people not agreeing with me, right? Like, and this is the reason. Like I know that I don't know everything about this issue. I know that I don't know everything, about old school rap. I'm 49 years old, as I said. In 1983, when I started listening to rap, I was 10 years old. And that is what I listened to, mostly from 1983 to 1998. But I know that I don't know everything. Fuzz, we've been talking now for a while, and you've told me about 18 different albums and 18 different groups. And that's all I've been listening to in the last couple of weeks. And it's fantastic. And I think that, as the more we talk about this, the more we talk about this and the more we get into it, we're planning, we'll get some social media things going. We'll bring that out. We'll get it on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And I think the more people that can talk about old school hip hop, the better. And Fuzz, before we go, you definitely got to tell people where they can listen to you, because that's been a fun couple of weeks for me.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that, brother. Go to fuzzjacks.bandcamp.com to check out some music. You can hit me up on your mom's favorite rapper, one word, on Instagram, Fuzz Jackson on Facebook, and North Jacks on Twitter. That's NORTHJAXX.
Awesome. And I'm Joro24, JORO24 on Twitter. Not big on Instagram, but I'll work on that. And then we're gonna get handles up for Hip Hop Reminiscence in the very near future, and we'll keep you all updated on that, so we can talk about it there as well as talking about it here on our episodes. And we'd like to thank our wonderful producer, JR Quitman. He's the man. The way I got, Fuzz and JR have known each other a long time. JR and I got to know each other. I did a podcast with a guy I know from Syracuse who runs a sports podcast, Mike Vaccaro. I was a guest of his for my baseball agency. And at the end of the episode, JR and I just talked about rap for 15 minutes because Mike was like, hey, man, Joe, you guys got to talk about this. And that's where this was born. So JR's fantastic. Fuzz, it's always great. And we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yes, sir. Peace out, everybody.